beautiful souls. Welcome to WeEmpower, your sanctuary of stories that stir the heart and spark change. Whether you're sipping coffee at home or stuck in traffic, take a deep breath with me. This is your moment. Today's episode is a gift I can't wait to unwrap with you. We'll meet a man who turns whispers into movements, Stephan Balzer, the visionary behind 100 plus TEDx stages, a master in listening, and a guide to living with quiet intention. His journey will remind you your voice matters. Then we will dive into a book that could gently tell your world it is Transcend, AI and the Future of Humanity, a compass for when life feels different. But first, let's begin, as we always do, with a song that speaks to the soul. This one from Justin Timberlake is really inspiring. I find it. It's Can't Stop the Feeling. And yeah, let it wash over you. Just the way you are. Welcome, Stephan Balzer, here in the show. I'm very happy to welcome you here. TEDx curator, master storyteller, and advocate for the power of listening. Welcome here in the show. I'm very happy to have you here.
Good morning.
Yes, good afternoon. From China to Canada, right?
I'm in Vancouver. I'm actually at the TED conference, the annual TED conference in Vancouver. Today is the fifth day, and I think we're spreading all over the world, Anabel. It's here at 1 o'clock at night, and I'm sitting in my hotel room, and I'm looking forward to our next, 60 minutes we spend together.
Yes, I'm also looking forward to it. It's here 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm just here, a curator and juror in Shenzhen, and we are talking about the future. You're also someone who talks about the future all the time, but you are also a master of listening, from hosting 100 plus transformative events to your viral talks you did on your own. You turned conversation into change. And I'm very happy that we are talking here today about you, the person who's always putting other people on stage and let them shine. You have enough to tell. I mean, you are also just the way you are. The song you sorted out couldn't be better. I mean, I know you have many other songs, of course, you like to dance. So we
That's
meet there
true.
too.
Absolutely. That's right. No, I
I
can
mean,
tell you, maybe for just the way you are, I fell in love with Billy Joel when I was a young man. So his voice is a voice because I love karaoke. Annabelle, you're in China right now, and Billy Joel is one of the few singers that I can sing in karaoke, and it's
oh,
exactly
wow.
it's my range. So
I will hear that.
yeah,
I want
so
to hear that.
I
Okay.
absolutely. Let's go and have karaoke. It's one of the few singers in karaoke that I can really sing along. So that's why,
Wow.
I think he wrote amazing songs. That's why I chose this. So thank you
If
for
I would have
taking that.
known that with karaoke, then we would have played the karaoke version. You have to sing to that.
Oh my God. Okay, we do this next time. Absolutely.
Exactly. Okay, we do next time. Then we do a karaoke version here in radio.
Absolutely. I'm all in. I'm all in. I'm all in for that.
And has it started very early, that you started dancing or like dancing and singing that much?
Um, it's yeah, it's interesting. I think I'm I I was fascinated by music when I was a child, um and music played a very important role when I grew up. So in my time when I grew up, I was listening mostly to radio because
Mm.
and I grew up with my mom alone. My mom raised me alone. So
Mm.
I would endlessly listen to radio stations and record. At that time, you had a cassette tape. I was, recording on cassette tape, and in West Berlin, when I grew up at that time, my favorite radio station was American Forces Network, AFN. So I was listening mainly to American music in the 70s and 80s. So I grew up with a lot of with the American songbook actually. So with
Interesting.
disco, with songwriters like Billy Joel, Yeah, so this is really, it was a very important part of my life, and I loved as well to dance. So I even took lessons later on in university, and I was dancing just as a hobby. Yeah, I did jazz dance for a couple of years, so that's
Wow.
why I really love dancing. So it's music. I cannot imagine a life without music. Absolutely. So I have a
And
lot
I
of
mean,
interest in music. Yeah.
and it's a form also of communicating, I'd say. And you've
Yes.
chosen communication for empowerment. Is
Mm.
this something which is also from childhood that you understood how powerful communication can be?
It's something, looking back, always when you get older, you try to understand your life, right? So you look back and you think like, where is this? Where are these connecting dots actually? How did I become who I am? So, and what I learned looking back is that I was always fascinating with new things. I'm incredibly curious. I'm an endless learner. I always love to explore new things, and I had this when I was a child and a young man, and I always wanted to share this with others. My
Mhm.
fascination about things, and I love to, always bring this to, share my fascination about things, and somehow this is a continuous story throughout my life. And I did this when I was at university. I became I joined a students initiatives, and I organized the events, and brought people to the university that we would not expect, and they were talking about their job because I I always had a hard time to understand at university that people would only go to big companies and just join very boring corporate companies, and there was so many other things that you could do outside. So I organized those events and was sharing this by inviting people that had very different jobs, and they would talk about their lives. So I think somehow that is something that continuously that went through all the decades that I was into innovation and curiosity, and then I love to share this with others. Absolutely, yeah.
Is there one talk where you say, this talk really changed my life, or this talk is among others, the talk I would suggest everybody to listen to?
Oh, there's so many talks. If you come to TED, that are on my eternal list. But I think maybe,
Mhm.
and it's also one of the most popular ones. Which was someone, one talk that I also love is probably the talk about education and about schools. It's by Sir Ken Robinson. He was a um, advisor to the UK government on education, and he talks in his talk. He had several talks on TED, but the one that really struck me at that time was his talk about how schools kill creativity,
Mhm.
because we all went to school and we all know that system. And he talks about the fact that um, we we were teaching and we're teaching children in a system that actually goes all the way back to the late 1900s, when the world around us was a very different world, and we, that time it was the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, and um, we needed a lot of people to quickly enter the job market, and it was this old Victorian system where you have the teacher in the front, you know,
Mhm.
children are sitting and they have to listen and they have to replicate everything, and you do this all over, right? Very quickly. There's no interaction. There's no questioning. And he said at that time that system was fine, but wouldn't we all agree that in 130 years, world has changed many times, and we still teach the same way. That was really eye opening when I heard this the first time, and there's still something that is, touching me. I'm a parent myself now, so looking at your children and the potential of children that they
Yeah.
are, it's so incredible. And changing the school system is, I think, something that parents globally struggle with, especially if you see the old school model. Because there are schools that are doing a better job, but still, I think majority, when I look at Germany, is still old school. And that was, for me, an
Yeah.
amazing talk next to many others. And I think maybe many listeners know TED Talks. and everybody has probably, his or her favorite ones. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to listen to them on a regular basis. And the one you mentioned got really viral because in addition to the talk is really good, I think it reminded everybody who is a parent or everybody who is an adult of the childhood and about at least one really story where school was really bad and really got on our nerves and was really treating us bad, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. I don't know if you remember, I always ask people how many teachers they remember were amazing
Mm, yeah.
when they look back. And usually people never need two hands. And very often, not even if they take one hand, they maybe say two, three.
Mhm.
I never
Mhm.
had anybody say five teachers in their
Wow.
whole, school career were amazing. Usually it's two or three. And those two and three uh, were so good that people remember the name, remember
Mhm.
even the moments in school that motivated them so much that they were looking forward, for those lessons. And the good thing
Mhm.
is we forget the other. The great thing about the human brain is that we easily forget the bad parts, right? So you don't remember really the very boring lessons with teachers that you know they did their job, but they were not passionate about it. And I remember them as well. Same with me. I had like maybe two or three teachers that were outstanding, and I loved them. And there were many others that were okay, but they never sparked any interest
Yeah, yeah.
in me at that time. So
So you remember really names from elementary school?
I do some
Wow,
names from elementary school. I remember. Yes,
wow, that's
absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
they were
yeah.
really good, and thanks to
Yes,
them, others could be a bit worse.
yes, absolutely. No, you're right. Absolutely.
You also gave a lot of talks, and we talked before this show about one project you made, which is super interesting. And in the beginning, I said that you are also a great listener. And from this listening, I think you learned a lot. Do you want to share a bit about this project, which is
Yes,
really, or could be life-changing also for a lot of people?
I think so because it's. I would say maybe the what I took out of the project and learning from me was something I also turned into a small talk on the TED stage in Hamburg. Um, well, the project is a project that David Lynch and his son, David Lynch, the film director, did. He did it in the US in 2008 and nine, and they through a friend we were connected, and they wanted my help when it comes to financing and I didn't know about the project, and they sent me a trailer, and I was blown away by the idea of what they planned. And they took a car and they were just driving through the different federal states, and they were randomly talking to people on the streets, so people didn't know what it was about, and they would sit them down for 60 minutes and just ask them questions and listen to
Mhm.
them. And those questions were very personal questions, and the whole questionnaire was had a great structure, and it would unveil very personal stories. And if you look at the structure, they had a great technique to pull people deeper and deeper and in their reflection about their lives. And
Mhm.
so I told them, when they finished, I said, if you ever plan to go, outside the US with the project, I'd love to do this in Germany because in Germany we have a lot of stories. And you remember we had 20, when I talked with them 20 years after unification. So I said, we have a lot of German stories, and that's what happened. So they contacted me like 6 months later and said, we are ready. We are ready. We can do it, Stefan. And then it was on me to put everything together. So I became a co-producer with David Lynch, and I'm very proud to have David and me being in the IMDb database as a co-producer. And I put
Wow.
everything together, and then we did the project in Germany, and we went on the road, and we interviewed people in both West and East Germany,
Wow.
and the result were interviews
Mhm.
of people like really all ages, people that we, met on the street randomly and that just gave us 45, 60 minutes of their time. And they were open to answer those questions. And the interesting thing is that, I had discussion before with some other people and they said probably it doesn't work because, Americans are more open and they share their stories. This, you meet somebody somewhere in a bar in New York and they would, tell you all their life, right? And that doesn't work in Germany. So, and the interesting thing, it turned out not to be true. It was interesting that, talking to a stranger, those people would really unveil, everything. They would reflect about,
Yeah.
important, parts of their life. And so it became a fascinating project. We won many awards at that time. The project is still online, and you can listen to those, to those interviews. And it was, my motivation was because my mom came from East Germany and got stuck in West Berlin
Yeah.
during the week in August of 1961. So just by accident, I was born in West Berlin, and so I traveled
Yeah.
both countries. That's why we did it.
So we will pause here, but don't go too far because when we return, Stephan will share with us some further secrets and, of course, tell us a bit further about TEDx. So stay tuned. We are back in a few minutes. Welcome back, Rob. Stephan, before the break, you said that you made a documentary together with David Lynch, and it's still available. And you interviewed people just for 60 minutes. And the great thing about is that you had also this West Berlin and East Berlin side, and it was ringing a little bit to you. It was something which changed also you or yourself because you worked a little bit on your history, right? On your own childhood, because you said it was just a kind of accident that you were born in Berlin West. And the ones who know not that much about the history, we had the Berlin West and Berlin East, and it was not a time, it was not easy to move from one to the other part of the city because of the Second World War and the wall between. So it is a bit of German history you're talking about. Um, is it also something which where you have an experience which is standing for this East and West, this different feelings, this different lifestyle? I mean, you as a
Yes,
you're facing so many words inside you.
absolutely. I think the fact that I grew up, in both Germanys at that time, it was a big gift. And if you look at the fact that we had a so-called unification 1990, where two countries actually, came back together, still, understanding that the separation over several decades created a different culture in both countries, and it was a challenge. And even until today, it is a
Mhm.
challenge, as we can see, because we still have discussions in Germany in the public around the East Germans and the West Germans, and you would actually
Yeah.
think that we should overcome this, but we didn't at that time. So I did the project because of that, because I I grew up in both countries and I knew both cultures, different cultures at that time, and the fact that we would interview different people from both sides was just for me a kind of the role of for someone, you remember the chronicles, in hundreds of years ago, so we had people in cities and small towns, and they were writing about the things happening in the cities, in their communities, the chronicles. And to me, this was a way of how to document a certain moment in time in our German history, 20 years after the unification. And the interesting, the one big observation was that, one question that we asked everybody in the interviews was about the most profound, trauma or change that happened to them in their life. And everybody from East Germany would say it was the fall of the wall. It was the unification, was the biggest shift in their lives. And none from the West side would say that. And I think that was an interesting observation, because it describes, what happened in Germany, because West Germany. For West Germany, it was just the opening of the wall.
Hmm.
Sorry, and for everybody in East Germany, it was a fundamental change in their life. It was maybe today you would call this a trauma, because they lost everything. Everything was gone. They lost a lot of their culture, and we never really worked on this as a country, right? I think we never really worked on the emotional side as well, which is all about communication. We never talked about these things, right? We never talked about the losses that those people had, and here I think as well we did a bad job on the
Yes.
political side to ignore this for so long. So and that's why we did that. So yes, the project is still online. It's called Interview Project Germany. You can look at those interviews, and the learning that I took from here was that um, because we had this incident that one of the interviewees died 4 weeks after we did the interview, and we shared the recording with his family, and the family heard things he never shared with the family. So he
Wow.
talked to us as strangers and shared stories that they never heard of. That gave me an impulse to say, this is what
Hmm.
we have to do. Talk to your loved ones before they die. Talk to your grandparents. Talk to your parents. Interview them. Maybe even let someone else do the interview, and not
Hmm.
someone too close, because there's an interesting phenomenon.
Yeah.
Maybe, Annabelle, I will share more stories from my family with you as a stranger. I mean, we know each other for some time, but I would share more with you than maybe with someone close from the family, because I know that member of the family then maybe shares it with others, and I would not be so open. So people are much more open when a neutral person is doing an interview, and capture those moments, because they are lost. Over hundreds of years, we would share stories from generation to generation, and that
Mhm.
gets lost a little bit. And that's why it's so easy today. Take your phone, your iPhone, and ask your parents and ask them, where did they come from? What did they feel when they were young? What
Mhm.
did they enjoy when they were young? And I realized people want to share. You just
Mhm.
have to ask them. And I think very often in our lives, we don't ask them. Right? They
Yeah.
have so much to tell. And it's so
And
simple. Just listen to them. Let them
it's
talk.
absolutely right. And I think it's great that you're pointing that out. And I have a question regarding that. What would you think? Would you be, or would people be as open as talking to a stranger if they talk to AI?
It's a good question. I think, especially the topic is discussed here in Vancouver during the TED conference this week a lot. And as you see AI progress, um,
Mm-hmm.
just over the last 6 months, I think we're seeing an incredible development, and we already, and I think maybe some people listening remember the movie Her, where you
Yeah.
have this man, and he falls in love with that voice
Mm-hmm.
in his computer, and that voice is an AI, and he develops a relationship to that voice, and that was a vision years ago. I mean, the movie is not so old, but it was, I think, an interesting vision moving forward, and probably what we will see is exactly that. And I think this puts us into a position to discuss if we want that, and if we want to allow technology to mimic a person, and as the fact that we are on a high speed train right now, and
Mm-hmm.
we're not
Absolutely.
discussing to slow down, but this train is driving at the moment at an incredible speed, and we actually do not know where it takes us when it comes to AI. And I think, especially your question about human and computer interface, like the relationship between those two, is a very critical one, because there is potential on one side, but there's
Mm-hmm.
also danger. And I think we had a first suicide a couple of months ago by a young man taking his life. in being in contact with, an artificial intelligence and misinterpreting these things. So I think it's very, very dangerous on one side. On the other side, imagine the incredible potential that we might have here if we would maybe allow a certain interaction when it comes to elderly people. Imagine if you
Mhm.
could have a companion you can talk to, you could feed that AI maybe with stories and images from their past, and that maybe that AI companion could become a real companion to talk to. Because don't
Mhm.
forget, loneliness is the disease of our time, right? We have more and more people globally living alone and not connecting anymore. So I think this will be an incredible discussion that we have to have about our
Mhm.
joint future with the technology like AI, which is advancing so quickly.
How far we go and how much we want to step into it and which role I could play as you
Yeah,
mentioned the movie, and we had a discussion a few years ago where Asian woman fell in love with her a robot and wanted to marry him, and there was a discussion what can be done if it's legally okay, and who gets then the money. And what if they want to do some things just as getting married, for example? So it's really changing something in the perspective. And you're absolutely right. I also think we are sitting in a train, in a high-speed train, and currently it looks like that we are not driving the train; it's driven. Um, and we have to think about ethics and talk about ethics, about values, about how far we want to go, as we should be in the driver's seat. Still, we can, but if it goes farther and farther, maybe we come to a point where it's not possible anymore.
absolutely. I think, as you say, we and if you look at it in history, we regulated lots of areas of our lives. Right? We have rules
Mhm.
for radio, we have rules for television, we have rules for many areas, and right now we do not have real rules right now for what is happening with AI, which is probably the most groundbreaking technology we will see in human history.
Mhm.
And I think that's a challenge, and we have to be aware of it. And today here, it's early morning here in Vancouver. Sam Altman from OpenAI will be on stage
Oh, oh,
and being interviewed here. So I will see him in a couple of hours. I will see him on stage, and we're all excited what his responses will be, because he's as you remember what his company is one of the they are at the forefront, and they move very fast, and a lot of people are afraid of where we're going, right? And rightly so. I think we have to question that.
absolutely. And it's interesting that some of these experts in this field, which are driving it further, are also mentioning that they are frightened. Uh, I mean, this is a little bit questioning. I mean, if you are in the middle, so you should be the one which is not only frightened, but also saying, okay, I give them some rules. I want to stop here, or it needs some, as you said, regulations maybe, but not just to just drive without any conditions. And
Yes, absolutely.
you're mentioning that he will speak on stage at TED. So I think we can look forward to getting some of this results and listen to this later on. And maybe if we stay at a TED and TED stage, what is the most important people have to learn from your experience when you prepare them for a TED
Mhm.
speech?
I think the biggest difference I always tell people is that we want to see the real you. So I want to connect to you. I think the TED Talks are so powerful because they do many things very good. First, they are short, maybe not as short as today's need, right? If you look at TikTok and others, they're like, it's getting even shorter. But
Mhm.
compared to old presentations, TED probably revolutionized the way presentations are given, also in the corporate space. But they usually have one idea. That's the important thing. They have one idea that they do explain very well. The second thing is that they allow me to connect to that person, meaning that I can understand the topic, but the topic as well resonates with the story of that person. And that's probably the biggest difference, especially, for me coming, from Germany, where you are taught that emotions and everything personal is not part of your presentation. We're actually told you take that out, right? Your own life and what you think about those topics do not play a role. And it's the opposite with TED. In TED, we want a relationship between the person, the speaker, and the topic. And why is that? Because it helps me in the audience to connect with you. It helps me to connect. We are social human beings, and if you allow me to connect to you on stage, I can identify better. I can feel the talk better, and that makes those talks so strong and so authentic. So that's, I think, the biggest difference is really the personal touch that those talks very often have, which you don't see in most corporate presentations. That's why it's so successful.
Absolutely. And I think it's also this vulnerability that people show, that you have the feeling that you can touch them not where they are best, not where they are the superheroes, but there where you really feel there's something I can smell and grab. I mean, you are so much traveling, you meet so many people. You must have some hacks which you maybe want to share with us, how you stay tuned with talking with a lot of people, with getting a lot of emotions from a lot of people, with having sometimes really so much power, but on the other, needing so much sleep. What are your hacks to stay straight, but on the other hand, stay vulnerable, stay open, but also stay in a way that you can all do all your things?
Um, I think there's not one single answer, but I think the most important part is that I learned over time in my life to balance these both sides in me. So people would probably say that I'm a very communicative person. I can talk to everybody on the planet. I learned in my life, I talk to the guy who opens the doors and the security
Mhm.
guy as well, to someone who is, I don't know, the president of a country, or a very famous professor of a university, and I can connect to all of them. Something I learned over time, and also I think I enjoy. I think this is a very important part. I love that. But the other side is as well, maybe we have to be. I think we have 1 minute left. One thing for myself that I take is that I need time alone. So I always take my time alone to digest and to rest and to process everything I see and everything I learn. And so working on that balance throughout my life really helped me a lot, right? So this is maybe the first hack that I can share right now.
That's great. Thank you so, so much. And it was a pleasure having you. And we definitely need a second series where we sing together. And I hope we connect very soon again in person, which is sometimes hard if there are two travelers as we are.